Hello, hello. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Happy to see some viewers joining, and great to see these panelists here. Hello, Lisa, Christoph,
Hi,
Quinn, and
Evan.
Oliver. Hello, hello. So first of all, thank you again for coming to be on this panel. It's really exciting to have Expert VR's first panel discussion here, and excited to be using this new software. So warning to anybody, I might mess something up, but hopefully it all goes well. So yeah, excited to be broadcasting this across LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And yeah, let's start off with some introductions. So I'll pass it off to Lisa first. If you'd like to introduce yourself, really excited to have you here.
Thanks, Evan. I'm really happy to be here too. My name is Lisa Trimble. I am the XR project manager and pedagogical lead at Conestoga College. And what we're trying to do is we are introducing VR learning across the board. All of our programs are getting some taste of it. And I'm working with faculty and with students to help make this a really transformational, exciting, new way of engaging with their learning.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here, and excited to see your insight as a professor and actually working in an institution. Because I know the other side here, all of us are kind of on the technology side, so really interesting mix. So Christoph, love the introduction from you.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm indeed on the other side. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of BodySwaps. BodySwaps is an experiential learning platform that uses virtual reality and AI to teach soft skills. It works a little bit like a flight simulator. I can explain more later. And we do work currently with colleges and with universities to, as Lisa put it, try and transform the way people learn and make a positive impact.
Amazing. Yeah, I've tested some of your work, Christoph, and just amazing what you're doing at Body Swaps, and love the technology. So thank you again for being here. Now I'll pass it over to Quinn and Oliver. I guess Quinn, if you want to start it off, and really excited. I was listening to your podcast that you were on a month or two ago about what you're doing with Banano. So excited to have you on.
Excellent, thank you. So my name is Quinn Gibson. I'm an elementary teacher here in Ontario, and I've sort of pioneered a program along with Oliver called Banano in the Classroom that teaches children about financial literacy and is a positive reinforcement behavior system that uses a cryptocurrency that's instant and feeless. So we're teaching about financial literacy with real world application of cryptocurrency. So it's a really cool project. I've had some really cool results. We're going to now our fourth year of running this program with a fourth new class. And I'm really excited with how this program has grown and with what I've seen in the students and their growth as well. So we can get into that a bit more later too.
Amazing. And yeah, pass it over to Oliver and to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Oliver. I am, I guess, a blockchain enthusiast. I spend most of my time living on Discord, which is a chat app, and I do graphic design and audio editing and some random things like that, and whatever else the blockchain space needs. And basically my goal is to push it forward through real life applications like what you just heard with Quinn here with the classroom. So really exciting to get to bring like essentially the biggest invention since the internet to the masses. It's pretty exciting.
Amazing. And I know Oliver's being a little humble because he's on multiple large blockchain projects working alongside the lead team and getting them out to the market. So thank you for being here, Oliver. And I guess before we jump into questions and starting a discussion here, I've shared the link for the POAP in all of the chats, but if you could explain it a little bit more, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah, very exciting. So a POAP is a proof of attendance protocol, NFT. And so some people may have heard of the hype of NFTs that has been going on recently, usually around images and buying and selling, but there's a lot more to it than that. And so what we're doing with POAP is think of it like badges on a blockchain timestamped forever that represent memories of your life, things that you've done, maybe events, songs, in this case, this webinar. And so we give out free NFTs that anybody can claim through an email or an Ethereum address. So ideally, what people will want to do is make an Ethereum address, and then you can receive it for free, and it'll just kind of build a collection over time of cool things that you've done. And then looking down the road, who knows, 5-10 years from now, you'll be able to look back at all these memories and have excellent artwork and a timestamp of when it happened. So the design for this particular POAP was created by my sister. And believe it or not, in this space, there's a lot of opportunity, especially for creatives. So she actually works full-time as a POAP designer / NFT creator. And I think a lot of people don't even realize that's an industry. So we'll get into that one day.
Amazing. So yeah, I've put that in the comments of all of the live streams right now to the link there, and you should be able to enter your email like Oliver said, or if you have an Ethereum address, you can put that in, and then you'll be able to claim this POAP. And from the conversations I've been having with Oliver, and we'll definitely get into this as the discussion continues, but I think it's a really interesting way of how these tools could be used in the future to have a digital resume that's verified on the blockchain. And there's a QR code that you could scan. I thought I could share it here, but yeah.
If you scan this, it'll bring you to a website called poap.website/education panel. And you can just write that down and go to the link instead. poap.website/education panel. I'll show it more throughout the call, but yes, you'll use this to claim your free NFT and build your little memory collection. I like to think of it like a Boy Scout sash. So.
Awesome. And yeah, already seeing a couple comments here from Todd that I've never heard of POAP. So excited to share this as the start of our technology and education discussion here. But yeah, going off of that, I guess each of us are kind of working with a couple, or I guess I should introduce myself quickly. So yeah, if you don't know, I'm Evan Sittler. I'm the co-founder of Expert VR, and we're creating virtual reality simulations for research and training across academic organizations as well as some industry partners. And our goal is to educate 1 million people through actions instead of statements. So really happy to be hosting this. But yeah, let's jump into some questions. So to start off, one of the first questions that I was thinking about was, what are some misconceptions that people usually have about the work that you do or the technology that you work with? And how do you think these misconceptions can be communicated more effectively? So Lisa, I'd love if you could start off with this one.
I would say some of the misconceptions that I'm encountering would include that everybody thinks that it is an incredibly difficult technology to use and that it is outside of their scope and their reach to be able to teach with this. Sometimes they think that we're trying to take their jobs away and that they're just going to be taught by VR. And it's actually the way that we're trying to use it is a way of augmenting and enriching teaching. There's absolutely no way that we're not going to be having teachers and professors and instructors who are still doing incredible pedagogy. But sometimes people think that. And then the other thing is that they all think that we're going to develop a holodeck for them, in a week or two. And you can get your Earl Grey tea hot like that. And it's not quite there yet. So.
No, definitely not quite there yet. I think we're heading there, but great point. And I guess off of that, I think it'd be great to pass over to Christoph and what you're doing with body swaps and how that is like a tool, like Lisa said, that you're not replacing the teacher, but something that is now teaching material that the teacher can use.
Yeah, first I would echo what Lisa said about the misconception. I would add another one, which is the optimistic misconception that we get, which is that VR is enough. Some people are just like, oh, we bought the headset, we bought the software, we're good to go. As a rule of thumb, every pound you spend on hardware and software, spend 2 pounds on human resources. That it takes a lot of work to make it happen. Now, to illustrate Lisa's point on what we call collaborative intelligence, how the technology can work together with the teacher, I can take example of one of the products we have, which is a job interview simulation. In your college, you're going to have mock interviews that are offered to the students. You're lucky if you have a third of students who are going to take the mock interview. And the students, they're going to have one mock interview at some point in the last year, which may be the day before or a few months before they have an actual interview. And the mock interview is short. It's half an hour, you're preparing for an interview, and that's it. What you can do with VR is you can give students a tool to prepare for that before that. learn about their own anxiety, learn about their own strengths, and how to build a story around their strengths that connects with a job. The art of storytelling, how do you answer a weird question with a structure that makes an impact? And so when they arrive at the mock interview, the basics are covered. They are prepared, and what you're going to do with the career counselor is really kind of like iron out those the last details and really make it pop. And so in a way, the technology is doing all the boring, simple, automatable work to leave the teacher or the career to what they're best for, which is that kind of personalized mentoring and the human connections that comes with it.
I love it. And yeah, definitely echoes what Lisa's saying there. And love that point of every pound you put in for technology, you need 2 pounds in for teachers. I think passing it off to Quinn here, obviously in a different space from the higher education, university and colleges to the elementary school, but I think probably some similarities of how you still need to have that teacher input or a lot of it with the technology that you're using, and how that is just the building blocks to what is going to the future. But love to hear.
No, absolutely. I really like what Christophe said as well. For every pound of technology, you need that 2 pounds of that human or that teacher there. And I would echo that 100% in what we're doing as well. I think some of the misconceptions around using cryptocurrency in a classroom, it just comes from people not understanding blockchain and how it works and what that is. And Oliver's done an excellent job of sort of onboarding and being able to educate new people and bring them into being able to use Banano in the classroom in sort of a very seamless and almost automated way. So we've really looked at removing the barriers of entry for any educators that are looking to use this sort of project in their classroom. And I think, again, the biggest thing is you're not going to see a change in the students' behavior and their engagement with it unless you're excited about it and you bring the enthusiasm and you bring sort of all of your energy and put that into it as well, and you focus on that. And then as far as sort of the financial literacy piece that we teach with it, I think that's something that people may not understand as a need, but looking back on our own educational careers and reflecting, sort of as a good reflective practitioner does, we can see that there was a lack of financial literacy skills explicitly taught. And now we've found a way to do this in almost a gamified way, where students are now learning about financial literacy and having fun doing that as well.
Amazing. And I guess before I pass it off to Oliver, and maybe Oliver can hop in on this a little bit more, could you explain what you're doing a little bit more for those that,
Absolutely.
I think probably me have just been watching the webinars or the podcast. So.
Absolutely. So Banano in the Classroom is a system that I've implemented. So I control one wallet, and within that wallet, I have multiple sub wallets. So sort of like Oliver's showing there, you can see. And now we use Banano because it's instant and feeless. So I can send Banano back and forth between my students and myself as many times as I want, as many as I want, with no fees. And it happens like that, which is really cool because it gives the students that instant gratification of seeing it happen. So with the wallets come a individual monkey, which has different avatars for the kids to have. So every student has their own monkey that identifies them, and along with that is a QR code that identifies their wallet. So traditionally throughout the day, we'll have certain activities that are set up where they'll be able to earn points or earn Banano for completing tasks, or walking quietly to and from the gym, for being on task. If I get compliments from other teachers about how the lunchroom went, things like that. The custodian and I have actually set up a system where she rates our classroom in our hallway out of 10, and the students get a Banano for each point out of 10 that we get, and it's led to our classroom going from being a mess to the students now taking responsibility for their learning space, and the custodian being able to do their job and us doing our job and keeping our space much better. And then the Banano are then spent in what I call the store, where we have different. It opens up on Friday once the kids have gotten a certain amount of the supply of Banano. So about 50% of the supply works out to be about 50,000 Banano that they need to own. The reason that we do those numbers is it just matches up nicely to the Ontario curriculum for what numbers the students need to be working with at that age. And then we have the store open so they're able to buy certain experiences that they're able to then do on, like, say, a Friday afternoon. So I've got things like air hockey, ping pong, mini basketball, Lego, a lot of things that provide collaborative work for the students as well. And then in that's where we teach the financial literacy skills, because we'll do certain things. Maybe we'll go on sale. So something that is bigger might be more than if you bought 3 of the same thing, but smaller. So we're trying to look at those very simple lessons there. And then we're also looking at having bigger prizes where the students would want to save up and understanding the value of saving as well. As the project moves forward, we're potentially looking at introducing an investing facet to this and sort of starting to teach the students about interest and compound interest at a very young age, so that they do have that very, very sound financial literacy background and to build off of. But that's sort of going towards the future there as well.
Really interesting. I love how this is being implemented in the classroom. And yeah, it's so cool that we were able to make this connection and be able to show more educators what you're doing. I guess passing it on to Oliver, if you want to talk about some misconceptions, but also I'm just interested to hear, and want to go around again with this question, but what do you think the future is of this technology in the education space specifically?
Sure. Okay, so I think they kind of tie hand in hand. Is that I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that people think it's used to skirt around the rules or by criminals. And it's a permanent, completely visible timestamp on a ledger that is shared by the entire world. It's the worst place to skirt rules and try to be a criminal, if we're being honest. So that is one big misconception that kind of leads into all this stuff where they get hesitant, where they're like, why would I use it as a currency, or why would I use it in my education system or something like that? But the technology behind this stuff is incredibly powerful, and it's going to impact every single facet of our lives, whether we realize it or not. It already is. I think a lot of people just don't know this. So in the education space specifically, I'm really excited about timestamps, specifically like immutable timestamps. So if you participate in a class and you earn a credit, you could earn an NFT that represents you earning that credit, and it would be there forever, and no one could refute it, and it can't be faked. And there's a whole lot of other values that would come with this too. Diplomas and all that stuff would essentially become automated. It would be, oh, if you have X, Y, and Z, then it just creates you a new NFT that represents your entire degree or diploma. We have the POAPs for attendance. Teachers could give those out with every single class if they wanted to, and then they could see firsthand who attended all of their classes. It's possible to be gamed at this point, but like as the system improves, yeah, we could totally see a system where teachers give out like proof of attendance to their classes that students could then use as leverage later, even if they wanted. And it doesn't really stop. As we're proving with Banano in the classroom, like I've just touched on NFTs in a class, and we haven't even talked about currency, financial literacy, the gamification. I've even seen things where classrooms can work together to earn money to then pay for things that they need in their classroom because you can do that in this space. So who knows at this point where we're going to go, but I do think it's going to impact every single piece of it.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely so many aspects that it could impact and so many things to keep in mind. I guess passing it back over to Christoph, interested to see where you think the future of this technology is going. If anything that Oliver's talking about, you see the mix, and also just reading on Facebook, LinkedIn, I saw one of your comments earlier this morning about no more classroom, think experiences. So interested to see what you think, or explaining that a little bit more.
Yeah, and at the very beginning of this podcast, you said something like delivering change through actions, not statements, which is an exact paraphrase for no more classroom experiences. It comes from something I read, which is the traditional architecture of learning, both the literal architecture and the learning architecture, was the classroom, the one-to-many in a single location, and that literally comes from the fact that you had to regroup people within 4 walls because you had one teacher and they didn't have a microphone or megaphone or nothing. That's where it comes from. Now with technology, with this this co-location is not needed, the synchronicity is not needed, and the question is what is the new architecture for learning? Not that technology is going to bring us somewhere we don't know. The real question is, how do we learn as human beings? And can technology bring us closer to how we learn for real? And so if you think, and that's the example I use, if you think about the last difficult conversation you had, private life or professional life, just think about it. You might have been fighting with your partners or asked for a raise or pitched an idea. If you reflect on how you became better at this type of conversation throughout your life, you will notice that what you did is you tried new stuff, consciously or subconsciously. You got feedback from the world, sometimes success, sometimes failure, sometimes hurting yourself, sometimes hurting other people around you, and you adapted. That's how we learn. That's called learning by experience. What VR is it's the medium of experiences. So you can now create transferable experiences in VR that are completely safe for you and for those around you. And I think that's really where VR is going to do, is offering transferable experiences that people can take to the new world of work, where you don't keep a job for life, where those human skills are very important.
Love it, and I think that goes right into where I think Lisa would probably take over this, and how is this being implemented right now in an academic institution, and where do you see it going in the future?
Christophe, I think that what you said is really powerful, and we're really aligned in what we're thinking about this. I am excited about this because for me, this takes the elements of what I think makes for meaningful and deep learning, and it's changing the way that we engage in the classroom. So it's making an emphasis on applied learning, on active learning. It's taking elements of online learning, inquiry-based learning, where we're teaching students to guide through their own reflective process in learning and asking questions about it. What would happen if? How would things be different? What are the implications if I do it this way? It also gives them an opportunity to rehearse and to practice and play. And anybody who's ever worked with little kids knows that that's such a crucial element for how we engage with and how we learn, and why this makes for something that's really exciting. It's helping students to not just know the what and the how, but the why. And that's what we really want students to come away with. And this is also going to change things like how institutions think about academic integrity as well. Because when we create assignments that are applied learning, taking the knowledge that you know, saying, okay, here's another scenario that's similar but slightly different. How do you take what you've learned in this experience and then apply that knowledge to this new experience? It makes it harder to cheat when it's not just regurgitating answers, and getting the right answer on something, because you're actually showing that you've learned a skill, that you have learned how to make connections to things. Part of the success of this, if we're really going to be looking at it from a student-centered perspective, is to create an overall ecosystem of learner supports in a digital space. So what do we need to have a successful learning experience for students? What does that look like? Why is the feedback of what they got right just as important as what they got wrong? Students have to be able to see how what they're doing fits into a larger context of things. And I think that this is going to be changing that as it becomes more and more accessible, as it becomes more and more available, as it becomes more and more affordable, and more educators are getting excited about this idea. I think it's going to be changing everything for all of us as educators, and I'm really glad to be part of this in this education space. There is one other thing that I think that we are just on the cusp of really figuring out what it means as educators, and that's the accessibility component of it too. We are really having to be intentional about what accessible VR spaces look like, how they respond to student accommodations. Between 17 and 30% of our students are needing accommodations at any point in time. So how are we creating a space for learning, a safe space for learning that takes into account things like anxiety or vision issues or hearing issues or mobility issues? How are we making our learning something so that there are fewer barriers for students. And technology can really do that. It can also really get in the way of that if the technology is put in front of the student needs. And so I think this conversation as it evolves is an exciting one to be part of.
Completely agree with all of those points. And I think a lot to dig in there. I think it's, really important that we're showing students the why behind everything, as well as then also thinking, how do we make this accessible for everybody to experience that why? Before I pass it on, I just saw some comments here asking for a blog on what Quinn's working on. So I just put it into the chat. Again, this is my first time using StreamYard, so hopefully it shows up in all the chats. It looks like it is, maybe not on LinkedIn, but I will make sure to share it with anybody there that comments, and I can send that over. And I think to Todd's question asking where's a good place to start with blockchain, that's probably a good blog post to start with if you're looking for it in the classroom. But going off of what Lisa was talking about there and the why in the classroom and introducing that to students, obviously myself, Lisa, and Christoph, we're kind of working usually with people in post-secondary or older. Quinn, I'd love to hear your opinion on like what you're doing and what you're doing is introducing that why at a younger age and how important that is and how the technology helps.
No, absolutely. So I do think that, ultimately learning by doing is how we're truly learning, and to create authentic assessment opportunities. We can do that with this technology. And talking about just the virtual reality, not that I'm a huge part in that reality, this is something I would love to learn more about, because I can see how it can really create those authentic assessment opportunities for the students in my classroom. I don't believe in tests. I don't do formal assessment in that sense. I look at the sort of observations and conversations and the end products that I have with my students. So I do long-term applied skill projects that I want them to work on to show what they can actually do. And I believe that, using this technology, we can create a more accessible way for the students to access these types of projects. And instead of it being a consumable resource-rich project, it can be something that's renewable and done over and over again, and they're able to create these really rich projects themselves that are then also savable and transferable throughout their academic career. So I think that's something that would be really cool to see as well. And ultimately, whatever leads to more authentic learning for our students and can meet them where they're at and where their needs are is going to be better. And I do see that VR definitely offers that to our students. And then speaking with the sort of the blockchain and the understanding of the financial literacy piece, and even the understanding of a cryptocurrency at a young age, if we're looking at what our world may look like in 5, 10, or 15 years, some of the jobs that we're talking about today wouldn't have even been possible in 5 years ago, let's say even. So introducing them to something now that could be as big as the internet, if not bigger, or as Oliver said one time, the internet, but done right, it's going to be really cool and set them up for success in the future, because they're going to be introduced not only to this, but they're also going to be adaptable and flexible to new technologies that may come out as well. So I see it, offering a lot of benefits to our students at a young age, as well as sort of at that secondary or post-secondary level.
I love that. And I haven't thought about that too much, either on the blockchain side or the VR, about how introducing this at whatever level of schooling, you're really helping inspire students of this is a technology that could be used outside of school and into the future. That's a really interesting point. I guess off of that, again, back to you, Quinn, and then Oliver, and then back around. But over the past year and a half, obviously a topic that comes up in every conversation is COVID-19. Wondering how this has affected what you're doing and how this has affected blockchain and the technology that you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. So the switch to virtual is really tough. It was really tough on a lot of the students, but those that were in it really did create a separation between those who were affluent and had access to resources and those that were not. And I think that's a huge issue that needs to be addressed on a national level, to be completely honest. The access that our students have to technology at a young age needs to be something that's addressed nationally, so that all of our students are on an equal playing field. From that, it did sort of, and then speaking of sort of the blockchain, it did kind of derail our Banano in the classroom a little bit, because a lot of the prizes were very physical. They were based around, being able to interact with each other, even with some of the different regulations that we had to follow and some of the rules that we had to follow. We had to adapt and change how the Banano store functioned. I'm looking forward to hopefully, a return to normalcy this year, to get a new group excited and involved in this project again and sort of see how the changes that we've made and implemented can affect them as well. So.
Hey, can I just say something super quick? I just wanted to point out, because this was really cool, and he didn't highlight it, but he should have, because it's fantastic. So I think it was last year, maybe a year. It was probably pre-COVID, but the teachers went on strike. And when they went on strike, part of that meant that they weren't allowed to put any money into their classrooms themselves. And I don't think, students don't realize how much teachers put in themselves. Parents don't realize how much, no one realizes how much teachers put in themselves. Let's be fair. And so when the kids got that store and 60% of the things were just blacked out because they weren't allowed to have them anymore, oh man, that strike hit home. Those 9-year-olds knew what a strike was. And I don't exactly, right? That's a pretty big deal. So I just wanted to highlight that.
No, that's a great point of how the real world is affecting the classroom learning, especially at that young age, and kind of a hard lesson to learn, I guess. And I guess off of that, continuing the COVID-19 train and past the strike there, yourself, Oliver, what have you seen changes in the industry around the technology you're working with, and anything you've seen going on in the education sector because of COVID-19?
For sure. Massive acceleration on my end. Absolutely unbelievable what's happened. So pre-COVID, it was kind of technology was starting, but there wasn't really a massive drive for people to use it yet, because they were still in their offices working their regular jobs. The idea of working remotely wasn't normified yet, which I've been trying to do it for years and years before it was normal. But now that I've noticed a huge psychological shift in people, where you can say you work remotely now and everyone just goes, okay. But pre-COVID, if you said that to someone, they were quite confused generally. They didn't even know what that meant. And now we're talking blockchain has completely exploded, because now that everyone's working remotely, it just makes sense. If you're going to do things online, you should be doing them on a secure, verifiable system when possible. It should be transparent when possible. It should be completely permissionless and accountable when possible, and all of those things. And so a lot of company, and also people are buying stuff online a lot, and they're trying to figure out side gigs that they can do online a lot, because they're at home. Why wouldn't they? And all of that kind of compound to this completely exploding as an industry. I think it's up 10, 20 times since the start of COVID. And the funding for these projects is becoming outrageous, unicorns constantly. So there are jobs everywhere in every sector. If there's a job in the real world that involves some kind of technology, it probably also applies to the blockchain space, whether it's legal, writer, graphic design, just support, and technical support and answering questions. Every project needs those, and they pay for it just as they would with any other business. So watching this explode over the last year has been, I don't even know how to word it really, because now I work full time in the space, and pre-COVID, I was still trying to do it, but it was much, much harder to do.
For sure. Yeah, definitely interesting to see that correlation between, or it's kind of obvious, but the education side of how blockchain can be used taking off, but then also all the jobs that are coming out of it, and how just being educated in the technologies that we're talking about in general can help you pass the education space. Lisa, I saw you nodding a lot there. Obviously, we started working together just over a year ago. So interested to hear your opinion on and your insight into COVID-19 and how it's affected what Conestoga is doing in VR in general.
Well, A year ago, a year and a half ago or so, we did start moving a lot of, programs online and starting to develop some VR. And initially, a lot of our programs, I think, just saw it as being a COVID response. And some of them kind of stepped away once they thought that we were going to be opening up again. I've had a good question here from Sabine, who asks, what do you think is needed for VR to be adapted on a larger scale? And that seems like a good segue to talk about what's been happening with COVID. They say it seems like there's still quite a bit of skepticism, and school management needs to become more confident in committing to VR. We have done a lot of road shows at our college. We are constantly giving demonstrations of different kinds of XR and what it can look like. So it can be totally immersive. It can be more flat. It can be interactive. And so we're showing different types of it, and we're talking about what some of the outcomes are, because you really do have to be able to anticipate what people's questions are. You have to show them that it's cost effective. You have to show them how it can impact students in positive ways, and how it's going to make teachers' lives easier and better, and the value that it's going to be bringing to the school. And you also have to be prepared to work with early adopters, especially, who are very excited about this kind of thing. So you're going to have this small group of people who are totally in, and you support them with everything you've got. And then they can start going around and being, and showing their successes and talking about what it is too. So the early adopters are really crucially important, as well as providing supports for people who are tentative or who are hesitant or who are worried about this. But you just really have to show what is possible, how long it takes, have an idea that you can that is going to answer their questions, and how students can benefit from this. If you have had responses with some small VR project, do a lot of user acceptance testing, get a lot of really good qualitative feedback from students and from faculty about what their experience has been like, and not just, check this off on a scale of 1 to 5 of what your experience was like. That has its importance and its measure, but you need a lot of qualitative data where people are saying in their own words, this was really exciting. This opened up doors for me as a learner that I couldn't even have imagined before. I'm going back and I'm playing this VR just to see what happens with different outcomes when I do it. And that is the sweet spot that we wanted to bring learners into, where they're excited about engaging in their own learning. And they're doing this at 3 o'clock in the morning because it's fun and they have access to it. And why not? That is exactly what we're hoping for. I hope that helps a little bit, Sabine. If you'd like some more discussion about some of the measures and things we're putting in place at the college, I'm happy to talk with you more about that.
No, that's a great answer. And can I just ask, where did you see that comment from Sabine? Because it's not coming up on my feed, so I'm wondering if I'm missing some.
Telepathy. No, it came in through private chat.
I think it's in a private chat,
Okay.
because Sabine is someone I invited, so I probably sent her the speaker's link. So she's in behind secret doors.
Okay, perfect. But yeah, Chris, I'd love to pass it on to you. Like, how you at Body Swaps, how are you able to show that value to the organizations that you're working with, and then showing the students or the people going through the simulations that value?
I'm going to start by answering your previous question about COVID and VR. In simple terms, short-term challenge, but it's brought the immersive revolution forward by about 10 years. Short-term challenge because VR needs to be facilitated. In other words, you need students and on campus with a facilitator to onboard them, to help them out. You cannot just now, because we're in early market, just send headsets away and see what happens. However, whereas VR in 2019, when we had discussion with colleges and universities, VR innovation was a matter of, I'm going to put it bluntly, of marketing, right? Let's be seen as being innovative. Now it's a matter of survival, and that changes everything, because online is the new normal. And when your differentiation as an institution is those four walls, but they don't exist anymore, it's getting harder and harder to justify the on-campus classroom high fees approach. You need to give your students, to attract them, to retain them, you need to give them something special. And we know after 18 months of doing this, that Zoom just does not deliver that real engagement learning. And so there's a big question mark now, and I don't have the answer, is, how do we reinvent learning for kind of this new world of education? And so to show value to the institutions, it's not about innovating for innovation's sake. First is proposing the best possible learning experience for your students. The second opportunity, which I think is interesting, is when you don't have walls, it's harder to get students to come, but it's easier to reach other students. In other words, if you build top level learning experiences, whether it's Quinn and Oliver's project or Body Swaps, and you put your stamp on it as an institution, you can essentially create micro credentials. A 3-year curriculum makes no sense if you don't have to be on campus, right? It's about the one skill that you want. And so if you can own that skill as an institution and create a great experience around it, it becomes a source of revenue. Because that's the education market is not an archipelago anymore, right? It's a super connected world where students can jump from one island to another just like this. So the role of blockchain and the role of VR in a decentralized education world essentially is going to be very interesting.
Great point, and definitely really interested in the point about those micro credentials, and I'd love to hear Quinn and Oliver's opinion on that. But first, I just want to pass it back to Lisa on what you've been seeing in the micro credential space. I know that I've been having some conversations with others in the space, and how long it takes to get those kind of micro credential programs approved. Interested to hear your take on like where it's heading, when it might be more widely spread across institutions, and what you think about it.
I really agree with what Christophe has said in this regard. I think that this is the direction that post-secondary institutions are going to be moving into for sure. I think it takes, depending on the group that you're working with, it will take between about 8 months to a year to get a micro-credential program approved. But we are finding, especially, for example, in health sciences and in business, that is a real area of focus right now is micro-credentials. And it's one that we're moving into that space in some really big ways. People are needing to learn the skills that they need to know and then be able to apply it immediately in their workspace. And I think that schools are starting to respond to that in ways that they haven't before.
Amazing, and good to hear that at least at Conestoga and the groups that you're working with, you're looking at moving those forward a lot faster, because some of the people that we've been talking to are saying it could take like a decade to bring those to fruition. So that's amazing to hear. And I guess passing it over to Quinn, I'd be really interested to hear about like your thoughts on micro credentials and what you think they're obviously in the elementary school system. Probably don't want to go to just micro credentials because you need to get those base work laid out, or base framework. But what you think what role they might have, as well as connecting those to the technology that you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, no, we can't really go to solely micro credentials. However, I do see the potential for in our intermediate grades, so grades 7 and 8. Introducing that as an option, introducing that through sort of an inquiry-based lens, and creating, again, these really sort of rich inquiry-based projects where the students are then able to format and create one end goal question and then have all an array of these different resources at their disposal to then go and access to get to their end goal. Things like Genius Hour projects where the students are given, an hour each week to work on something that they're just passionate about, something that they want to learn about or build or create or do. I could absolutely see how these micro-credentials could be brought into that. And then sort of tying it in with the blockchain a little bit, the idea of the POAPs in this realm would be very, very applicable. They almost sort of fit together just like puzzle pieces there, that as you complete these micro-credentials, you're then credited with this POAP. And then once you've completed X, Y, and Z, like Oliver said, you get this POAP that shows that you've now completed this skill. And I do see how that could be very applicable in our elementary, but then especially in our secondary schools as well, especially if we continue to keep this adapted model of learning sort of hybrid in class and online.
I would agree with that too. Part of my background is also as a teacher educator. So I've worked a lot with elementary teachers who creating maker spaces and genius hours and things like that. And asking kids, what is the problem you want to solve and how can we innovate that is it just changes how they think about themselves and the world and their relationship to it. So I'm excited to hear that.
Love that. And yeah, definitely really interesting and very different from my experience at school, and I'm sure all of our experiences at school, especially elementary school, is hearing how it's changing. I think giving the students a lot more control over their future and giving them that confidence to move forward is amazing. I guess off of that, what are like some of the, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but what are some of like the biggest challenges with moving these forward and introducing them in the different, whether you're in elementary school, I guess I'll start with you, Quinn, or then Lisa, I'll pass off to you after that, and then Christoph, secondary or an organization trying to introduce it to a school.
I think really it's just reluctancy on administration's part to want to change and to want to try something different and to want to go to limit. It's very easy for me to do something in my own classroom because I'm very self-contained, and what I do on the grand scheme of things isn't going to impact the board as a whole. And I think that the people that are they don't see the value of that. They're looking much too broad picture to focus in on the awesome that we're creating in our classrooms now and to see how that could be. I think eventually we'll get enough teachers on board with doing different things and introducing the different technology into their classrooms that it'll be too hard to ignore the awesome that's going on within, all of these classrooms. And then there's got to be something to it. And once we hit that sort of critical mass point, I think then we'll really get the ball rolling. But until we're there, we're sort of pushing that rock uphill and fighting, against what everything used to be. And I think that's the biggest barrier that we're facing is just people don't like change.
Definitely makes a lot of sense. And yeah, Lisa, I see you nodding a lot. I'm assuming it's pretty similar in your space as well.
Yeah, I think that education generally is fairly conservative and slow to change and slow to adapt new techniques. But it's also, we have a hard time teaching differently than we were taught. All of us have seen that experience of university students or have been that student where the professor has said, look to the left, look to the right, two people on either side aren't going to be there by the time Christmas exams come around, because you're just not that good. So it's changing the questions that we ask of what an education is for. Is education about control, or is education about possibilities? And how do we support those possibilities for students in new ways? And the people who think that education is about control are not going to be down with this, because there's too many open ways of exploration and too many ways that students can define their own meaning making. And that's going to make some people really uncomfortable. But it's when you get those early adapters who start having really wonderful successes that you can start to share, that people kind of go, maybe this is kind of interesting, and let them play with it. People have to be able to explore it themselves and see that it's easy and that it's supporting student learning and that it's actually making instructing easier and better.
Amazing. Yeah, I just wrote down that quote, is education about control or possibilities? How do we support students reach those possibilities? I think that's great. And yeah, now interested to hear, Christoph, off of that, how are you supporting it and how, what are those biggest challenges in doing that?
Well, that was definitely the quote of the day, so I'm going to be much more prosaic. And to put it very bluntly, deploying virtual reality is a pain, right? There's no other way to put it. That means that the pain point that you're solving has to be greater than the pain you're inflicting by demanding that level of change. And off of that, you have two things that you can do. One is make sure that you start with real pain points. Otherwise, you end up dealing with people who are motivated, who are change agents, but will find a wall unless they can prove that indeed we are solving real pain points. The other challenge is to how can we diminish the pain of change, and I think that has to come from the industry, from the software vendors, and from the manufacturers. At the moment, it's a little bit too much of an adventure to deploy VR, and that's the hardware, but that's also the best practices. There's no clear guidebook on those are the 3 ways you can do this. Some of the best practices, and it's normal. It's early days, but I think one, the commoditization of the distribution of experiences is going to be important. In other words, you shouldn't feel like entering the jungle when you want to find great content for your institution, and that's going to come with an app store, with something like that. The second one is case studies and best practices, and that again comes with experience, and that's going to help justify the kind of the return on investment. That being said, I still believe there's a huge advantage in being the first mover in that sector. It might be complicated, but for the strategic reasons we mentioned, it will pay off for those institutions who go in there early.
No, definitely some great advice. Being the first mover is huge, and I guess off of that, we're kind of getting close to wrapping up, so I have 2 more questions, and off of that one, being the first mover, I guess we'll start with Oliver. Like, how does somebody today, somebody that's watching this panel or watching the recording later, how do they start using blockchain or NFTs to start with you, Oliver, and get involved as an educator?
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So that's I did want to just make sure I tied all of this into an education sphere before I go. So I think the point I want to drive home with all this ranting about how this is exploding, it's really important, people should learn about it, is that the education sector needs to prioritize teaching people about this, because it's creating an entire new world of opportunity and jobs and like things that did not exist 5 years ago, even last year, in that concept. Like I would have never, ever in my life as a child assumed that this is what I would be doing, because this did not exist when I was a child. And so when I used to try to come up with what I wanted to do with my life, I didn't know the answer, truthfully. I kind of always, strangely enough, I guess I assumed I'd find it, and I did. But it didn't exist when I was trying to find the answer. So we need to prioritize this. VR specifically needs to prioritize this, because the two of them kind of like, they go hand in hand so closely. One great example would be like Decentraland. So just to highlight them for a second, like there's real world jobs. Like you could be a casino attendant in Decentraland in VR and get paid in a cryptocurrency that functions as good as dollars. And so your real job could be to work at a casino, but in a virtual world. There's offices for businesses that have virtual offices in Decentraland, and you could, instead of calling them or trying to contact their support via email, you can walk into their virtual office and talk to somebody. Like, we are going the way where these two things are going to blend. People are buying digital land and having ownership over a segment of a virtual world that's verified on a blockchain. But we're going to get there. So I just wanted to make sure that people understand that, like, as an education sector thing, yes, teachers need to get involved and they can use it in their classrooms like Quinn's doing. And yes, we can use POAPs and credentials within schools, but there's like the whole world is changing, and it's education's job to make sure that people know how to adapt to that world. And so they're going to need to basically start educating people on every aspect of this, not just how to get it in their class, but how to step outside the class and learn how to use it, because they will. It's easier for a child to make an Ethereum wallet than to make a bank account.
Oh, that's a great point, and I guess off of that, even easier to make a Banana account. So to Quinn, what is like the first 1 or 2 steps that as an educator that is getting it involved inside of their classroom, or looking, I guess, to teach it like Oliver's talking about and how they can use it? What are the first 1 or 2 steps that a teacher should take?
I guess as far as sort of the actual physical steps is, if you listen to the podcast, I know you linked that podcast across the
links the blog, but I can find the podcast.
A listen. It'll sort of take you through the entire startup process and sort of what we went through. We really broke down the onboarding process, got rid of all of the bugs. The biggest thing would be, honestly, if you just want to reach out to Oliver or myself, we'll be able to sort of guide you through that onboarding process. We are working on making it a little bit more automated, but at this point, it is still in its sort of fairly beta stage. So we are working to just roll it out, sort of us too, with onboarding people, but it will eventually become a little more automated. But then it's just get excited about it. If you're excited about it, your students are going to be excited about it, and find things that your students are going to enjoy and what you really want to reinforce, and pick certain skills that you very, very explicitly are going to teach them with this. Don't go into it thinking it's going to be this wonderful magic fix all that's going to, fix every problem that you have in your classroom. You're still going to need to work on your classroom management skills. You're still going to need to work on your pedagogy. You're still going to need to work on your curriculum knowledge. But this will help guide all of that and will help make those things easier. So that's what I would say about that.
Perfect. That's some good first steps, and thank you for offering your help there from both you and Oliver. Christoph, passing it over to you. What are those first 1 or 2 steps?
Well, I'm going to wrap it up repeating what you said. This was an hour full of great statements. There's a single action that you can start with for your institutions is get $300 from somewhere to purchase 1 headset, get some free content onto it, and start from there, and just put it on people's heads. Talking about VR is a bit like dancing about architecture, right? You need to do it. You need to put the skeptics in the headset, and that will start conversations. And once you've done that, the second action is to send me an email.
And what is that email?
That's chris@bodyswaps.co.
Perfect. And then over to you, Lisa. What are the first steps that you would say as an educator working in space?
I would say that part of how you're going to get buy-in from management and leadership is, yes, we need to have access to VR headsets and things like that. We also need clips on YouTube to show people. We need something that's really accessible that we can show in 2-minute increments. That's one of the things that we started doing with you, Evan, and that you've been so gracious about, is that whenever we had a demo showing something new and interesting, a new feature, something new and cool, then we ask for like a 1-minute video clip so that we can take that and we can show management, this is what it looks like. This is what a student looks like when they're doing this. This is what the experience is. Because as much as possible, it has to become something tangible and real for the people that you are trying to convince. And so just having your research and your demonstrations ready and your answers to the question, all of that is going to help move things forward.
No, yeah, that's definitely a great point on having that actual video. Like Christoph was saying, actually putting somebody in the headset, but you can't get that headset to everybody, especially over the past year. So having that other demonstration that shows what somebody is doing in the space. So we have a minute left here. I guess before I quickly wrap it up, was there anything else that I didn't touch on or any questions? I know there was a lot that I didn't get to, but were there any that anybody else wanted to quickly touch on?
Can I just take 2 seconds to tell people to claim that POAP again?
For sure. Yeah, it's up till 5 p.m.
Yeah. Okay. So you can go to a website, poap.website/education panel, claim a free NFT to prove that you were in attendance of this webinar, and build yourself a little portfolio on chain. So to do this, you can input an email address, and then it will send you something so that you can claim it later. But long term, you're going to want to download or create an Ethereum wallet. And so with that Ethereum wallet, you will get a public address. It starts with 0x, and then it will be like a long chain of numbers and letters. And you'll input that, and then it will create the NFT and send it to your address. So you'll be able to view your collection on the POAP app or something like that if that's what you'd like to do.
Awesome. And I see Nicole here saying, do you recommend a particular wallet? I know I use MetaMask, and I know you've recommended Trust Wallet in the past. Are those two good ones, or is there another one that you suggest, Oliver?
I have no particular preference. MetaMask is like the standard, but Trust Wallet's great. Rainbow Wallet, if you're on iOS, is really nice. But truthfully, like, there's so many ways now to create a wallet that it doesn't really matter. If you're really looking to learn, I would recommend downloading something like Brave Browser, which is a replacement for Google Chrome that integrates cryptocurrency and also blocks ads, maintains privacy. And so if you download Brave Browser, it has a built-in crypto wallet that functions as an extension, and you can just use that.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, everyone. Quinn, Oliver, Lisa, and Christoph for coming here and being on this panel. I'll be putting up the recording hopefully later today, if not tomorrow, and sharing it with everyone that attended and sharing it on our social media. But yeah, thank you again for coming and being part of this conversation.
Thanks a lot, Evan. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for having us.
I learned a lot. Thanks, guys. This was really cool.
Awesome.
I hope to do this again. I'm really excited for the whole VR blockchain merge. So yeah, let's do this again.
Same here. Big soon. Bye.
Cheers.
So,